Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. In today's case, we bring you a chilling and twisted tale, one of betrayal, deception, and a deadly obsession. This is the story of the casino wars Mafia in Las Vegas. A tale of power, greed, and calculated violence. This case will leave you wondering, what lengths will someone go to in their pursuit of wealth and control? And how did a city known for its glittering lights and boundless entertainment become a battleground for criminal empires? Stay with us as we unravel the dark and tragic story of the casino wars. Las Vegas in the 1970s wasn't just a playground for high rollers and dreamers, it was a chessboard for criminals. Behind the neon lights and roaring slot machines, a shadowy game of power and greed played out. What began as a bid for dominance in the city's booming casino industry spiraled into one of the bloodiest power struggles in organized crime history. This is the story of how two rival mafia families turned Sin City into a battlefield, and how their quest for supremacy ended in betrayal, murder, and the collapse of their empires. Las Vegas in the post-war era was a city of reinvention, rising from the arid desert as a dazzling beacon of opportunity. The glimmering casinos and luxury hotels promised riches and glamour to those willing to take a chance. But beneath the shimmering neon lights lay a far darker truth. Much of the city's prosperity was fueled by money stained with blood. Organized crime saw in Las Vegas not just a city but an opportunity, a glittering gold mine ripe for exploitation. In the 1950s, as tourists flocked to the Strip, the Chicago outfit seized its moment. Under the leadership of Vincent Lombardi, a man renowned for his cold, calculated demeanor, the outfit poured money into the development of high-end casinos. Lombardi was no mere thug, he was a strategist with an uncanny ability to foresee opportunity where others saw risk. He understood that Las Vegas was more than a gambling hotspot, it was a machine for laundering money, a seemingly legitimate front to wash the ill-gotten profits of extortion, loan sharking, and racketeering. Lombardi's success was swift and staggering. By the early 1960s, his fingerprints were all over the city's most opulent establishments. The Bellagio Royale, the Stardust, and the Sahara Palace became synonymous with the outfit's power. Lombardi ran his empire like a business, rewarding loyalty and punishing betrayal with ruthless efficiency. Millions flowed through his casinos, and he wielded influence over local politicians and law enforcement, ensuring his grip on the city remained unchallenged. But Lombardi's vision of a mob-controlled Las Vegas didn't go unnoticed. Across the country in New York, the Genovese crime family began to take an interest. The Genovese syndicate, already entrenched in the East Coast's criminal underworld, had long envied the Chicago outfit's dominance in the desert oasis. Carlo Moretti, the Genovese boss, was everything Lombardi wasn't. Charismatic, bold, and prone to violent outbursts, Moretti saw Las Vegas as the ultimate prize, a place where power and wealth intertwined in endless supply. Moretti knew he couldn't simply march into Lombardi's territory and claim it. The Chicago outfit's roots in Las Vegas ran deep, and any direct confrontation would lead to an all-out war. Instead, he chose a subtler approach. Moretti began acquiring smaller casinos, businesses that were struggling to compete with Lombardi's gleaming empire. These acquisitions were quiet at first, almost imperceptible, but they signaled the beginning of an ambitious power play. The Genovese syndicate's ambitions became clear when the Bellagio Royale, Lombardi's crown jewel, was brazenly targeted. A sophisticated heist left Lombardi's men humiliated and exposed. It wasn't just the money that was taken, it was a direct challenge to Lombardi's authority, a symbolic strike meant to announce Moretti's arrival in Las Vegas. Lombardi, who had ruled the city unchallenged for over a decade, recognized the move for what it was, an opening salvo in what promised to be a long and bloody battle. Moretti was no ordinary rival. He was cunning, unpredictable, and willing to take risks that others wouldn't dare. Lombardi knew that underestimating him could be fatal. The tension between the two crime families began to seep into the city itself. Las Vegas, once unified under the shadow of the Chicago outfit, became a chessboard for the two syndicates. Moretti's forces worked tirelessly to carve out a foothold, while Lombardi's men launched a campaign to crush the competition before it could gain momentum. Moretti's operations were spearheaded by his trusted enforcer, Frankie the Fox Russo, a man as devious as his nickname suggested. Russo specialized in sowing chaos and confusion, striking at the heart of Lombardi's operations with surgical precision. He orchestrated a series of attacks that crippled Lombardi's smaller businesses, from arson at a nightclub to armed robberies at supply depots critical to the casino's operations. Each strike sent a clear message: the Genovese family was here to stay. For Lombardi, the situation demanded retaliation. He brought in Anthony the Bull De Luca, his most loyal and feared enforcer, to restore order. De Luca's reputation for brutality was well earned, and he wasted no time in making his presence known. Within weeks, several of Moretti's associates disappeared, their bodies found scattered in the desert. The killings were deliberate and theatrical, a warning to anyone who dared align with the Genovese family. Yet, despite the violence, the war was far from over. Both sides were evenly matched, and every move was countered with equal force. Moretti's men retaliated by sabotaging Lombardi's supply chains and spreading fear among his allies. At the same time, Lombardi's forces tightened their grip on the Strip, ensuring that the Genovese family couldn't gain too much ground. But the stakes were more than just money or territory. This was a battle for dominance, for the right to claim Las Vegas as their own. It wasn't long before the FBI, long aware of organized crime's presence in the city, began to take notice of the escalating conflict. Agents posing as casino employees and high-stakes gamblers infiltrated both families, gathering intelligence on their operations. For the people of Las Vegas, the signs of war were impossible to ignore. Tourists, oblivious to the chaos simmering beneath the surface, continued to pour into the city, drawn by the promise of fortune and excitement. But for the locals, the violence was inescapable. Bombings, arson, and daylight shootings painted a picture of a city at war, where loyalty could mean the difference between life and death. The stage was set for a showdown that would determine the future of Las Vegas. As the two families prepared for the battles to come, the city's glittering facade began to crack, revealing the dark and dangerous reality hidden beneath. Lombardi and Moretti were locked in a deadly game of chess, each move bringing them closer to a confrontation that neither could afford to lose. And as the casino wars unfolded, it became clear that only one family would emerge victorious. As tensions between the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family escalated, Las Vegas began to change. The city that had once been a glittering paradise for tourists and gamblers now found itself divided by an invisible line of power. Behind the scenes, every decision, every move, and every deal was influenced by the brewing conflict between the two Mafia families. Vincent Lombardi, who had enjoyed years of unchallenged control over the Strip, faced an unprecedented threat. His once stable empire was now under siege from an enemy just as determined and ruthless as he was. Lombardi had spent decades cultivating alliances with business owners, politicians, and law enforcement. But loyalty was fickle in a city where money spoke louder than blood. As the Genovese family expanded its influence, cracks began to form in Lombardi's carefully constructed network of power. The Genovese family, led by Carlo Moretti, wasted no time in exploiting those cracks. Moretti's men knew exactly where to hit Lombardi where it hurt. Smaller casinos, reliant on Lombardi for protection, found themselves under pressure. Mysterious fires broke out in nightclubs that had ties to Lombardi's operations, and prominent casino owners began to receive anonymous threats. For many, it became safer to cooperate with the Genovese family than to remain loyal to Lombardi. One of Moretti's key operatives, Frankie the Fox Russo, was at the center of these efforts. Russo earned his nickname for his ability to operate in the shadows, striking with precision and vanishing before anyone could pin the blame on him. He orchestrated a campaign of sabotage and intimidation, making it clear that the Genovese family intended to take over Las Vegas, one piece at a time. Lombardi, however, was not a man to back down from a fight. He had built his empire through a combination of strategy and fear, and he wasn't about to let an outsider tear it apart. To counter Moretti's growing influence, Lombardi called upon his most trusted enforcer, Anthony the Bull De Luca. De Luca's reputation alone was enough to send a message. Known for his brutal efficiency, he was a man who solved problems with decisive and often violent action. De Luca wasted no time in responding to the threat posed by Russo and the Genovese family. Over a period of weeks, a series of attacks struck Moretti's operations. Several of Russo's associates disappeared without a trace. their bodies later discovered in shallow graves in the Nevada desert. Warehouses linked to the Genovese family were burned to the ground, and Lombardi's men openly declared that anyone who sided with Moretti would face the same fate. The violence quickly escalated, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Tourists remained blissfully unaware of the war raging behind the scenes, but locals could feel the tension in the air. The attacks were becoming bolder, with shootouts erupting in broad daylight and car bombings shaking the city. For the first time, Las Vegas began to feel less like an escape and more like a battleground. Yet, even as the body count rose, neither side could claim victory. Every move was countered with an equal and opposite response. When Lombardi's men raided a shipment of cash intended for Moretti's operations, the Genovese family retaliated by torching a nightclub under Lombardi's control. When one of Lombardi's trusted lieutenants was gunned down in a parking lot, De Luca made sure to leave a clear message by eliminating two of Moretti's key allies in one night. Amid the chaos, the FBI began to take notice. For years they had known about organized crime's influence in Las Vegas, but the scale and intensity of the conflict now demanded action. Agents infiltrated both families, posing as casino employees, suppliers, and even high-rolling gamblers. Their goal was to gather evidence that could bring down the mob's grip on the city once and for all. The mobsters, however, were no strangers to scrutiny. They conducted their business in whispers and coded language, often meeting in remote desert locations to avoid prying eyes. Even as the FBI closed in, both Lombardi and Moretti remained confident in their ability to outmaneuver the authorities. For the people of Las Vegas, the war was impossible to ignore. The once glitzy facade of the Strip now seemed to hide a darker reality. Every news report of a fire, a robbery, or a violent crime carried the unspoken implication of Mafia involvement. Businesses that had once thrived under Lombardi's protection found themselves caught in the crossfire, unsure of which side to support. The tension between the two families showed no signs of easing. Both Lombardi and Moretti were determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. But with each act of retaliation, the stakes grew higher and the city sank deeper into chaos. As the violence reached new heights, one thing became clear: this was a battle that could only end in bloodshed. The rivalry between the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family had turned Las Vegas into a city divided, and the stage was set for a showdown that would shake the Strip to its core. With neither side willing to back down, the question was no longer whether there would be casualties, but how far they were willing to go to claim the city as their own. By 1975, the conflict between the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family had escalated to unsustainable levels. Both sides were hemorrhaging money and manpower as the battle for control over Las Vegas consumed their resources. What had started as a calculated power struggle had devolved into a relentless cycle of violence, sabotage, and revenge. The casinos, once the shining jewels of the Strip, were now symbols of an all-out war between two criminal empires. Vincent Lombardi, whose grip on Las Vegas had once seemed unshakable, found himself increasingly on the defensive. His businesses were under constant attack, his allies were wavering, and his influence was starting to erode. Desperate to gain the upper hand, Lombardi devised a bold plan that could turn the tide in his favor. He set his sights on Frankie the Fox Russo, the cunning right-hand man of Carlo Moretti. Russo was the mastermind behind many of the Genovese family's successful operations in Las Vegas. If Lombardi could persuade him to switch sides, it would deal a devastating blow to Moretti's empire. Lombardi reached out to Russo through intermediaries, offering him a deal that was as enticing as it was dangerous. If Russo betrayed Moretti, Lombardi promised him a share of the Chicago outfit's profits in Las Vegas and a powerful position within his organization. For Russo, it was an opportunity to secure his future, but it also carried enormous risks. Turning against Moretti could mean signing his own death warrant. But Russo wasn't known as the Fox for nothing. He saw the opportunity not as a lifeline from Lombardi, but as a tool he could use to his own advantage. Rather than betray Moretti outright, Russo decided to set a trap. He fed Lombardi false intelligence about the Genovese family's operations, leading him to believe that a major shipment of money and weapons would be arriving at the Flamingo Casino, one of Moretti's key properties. Lombardi, eager to strike a decisive blow against his rival, took the bait. He ordered Anthony the Bull DeLuca and a team of trusted enforcers to intercept the shipment and seize control of the Flamingo. The plan seemed flawless, but when DeLuca's men stormed the casino, they found themselves walking into an ambush. The Flamingo was heavily guarded, and the Chicago outfit operatives were quickly overwhelmed. The failed raid was a disaster for Lombardi. Not only had he lost valuable men, but the public nature of the attack also drew the attention of law enforcement. The FBI, already monitoring both families, seized the opportunity to raid several of Lombardi's properties, uncovering evidence of his illegal operations. Lombardi's once untouchable empire began to crumble under the weight of federal scrutiny and internal chaos. For Russo, the success of his deception came with unintended consequences. Carlo Moretti, prone to paranoia, began to see betrayal everywhere. The raid on the Flamingo had been too close for comfort, and Moretti suspected there was a mole within his organization. His suspicions created a ripple effect of mistrust within the Genovese family. Allies turned against each other, and the once cohesive organization began to fracture under the weight of internal strife. Russo, despite his role in the Flamingo debacle, managed to maintain Moretti's trust, at least on the surface. But his ambition was beginning to outpace his loyalty. Russo had no intention of remaining a subordinate forever. He saw the turmoil within both families as an opportunity to rise to power. If he could play his cards right, he believed he could position himself as the new kingpin of Las Vegas. Meanwhile, the fallout from the Flamingo raid left Lombardi scrambling to maintain control. The botched operation had emboldened Moretti's forces, who launched a series of counterattacks on Lombardi's remaining assets. Casinos were torched, supply lines were disrupted, and Lombardi's allies faced relentless pressure to switch sides. As the violence escalated, the situation in Las Vegas grew increasingly precarious. The FBI intensified its efforts, deploying undercover agents to infiltrate both organizations and gather evidence of their crimes. For the first time, the federal government appeared to have a real chance of dismantling the mob's stranglehold on the city. The rivalry between Lombardi and Moretti had reached a breaking point. Both men knew that the war could not continue indefinitely. Yet neither was willing to back down, even as their empires teetered on the edge of collapse. The betrayal at the Flamingo had set a dangerous precedent, and the lines between ally and enemy were becoming increasingly blurred. For Russo, the chaos presented an opportunity, but it also brought new dangers. His calculated moves had earned him a reputation as a man who couldn't be trusted. Both Lombardi and Moretti began to question his motives, and whispers of betrayal spread through the ranks of both families. The stage was set for a final confrontation, but the outcome was far from certain. The once glamorous city of Las Vegas had become a battlefield, and the casualties were mounting. Lombardi's desperation, Moretti's paranoia, and Russo's ambition had created a perfect storm of violence and betrayal. The casino wars were far from over, but one thing was clear: the game was about to change, and no one would escape unscathed. The fallout from the ambush at the Flamingo reverberated through every corner of Las Vegas. Both the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family were reeling, their forces weakened by escalating violence and mounting mistrust. The city itself bore the scars of their battle. What had once been a haven of luxury and opportunity was now overshadowed by a dark undercurrent of fear. Business owners treaded carefully, unsure which side to align with, and whispers of betrayal and retribution filled every corner of the Strip. Vincent Lombardi knew his empire was hanging by a thread. The failed operation at the Flamingo had exposed vulnerabilities he could no longer ignore. The FBI was circling, and the Genovese family's relentless attacks on his assets had left him scrambling to maintain control. Yet Lombardi was not a man to bow to pressure. He had built his empire through calculated risks, and he believed that one bold move could turn the tide in his favor. The opportunity presented itself when one of Moretti's financial couriers, a man named Salvatore Greco, was arrested during an unrelated traffic stop. Greco was carrying a briefcase stuffed with laundered cash, along with ledgers detailing the Genovese family's financial operations in Las Vegas. The arrest was a blow to Moretti, but it was Lombardi who saw the true potential of the situation. Through his network of informants, Lombardi managed to obtain copies of the ledgers. The records revealed the extent of Moretti's influence and identified key individuals who were critical to his operations. Armed with this knowledge, Lombardi devised a plan to dismantle Moretti's empire from within. He began targeting the individuals listed in the ledgers using bribery, intimidation, and, when necessary, violence to turn them against their boss. The strategy was effective, but it came at a cost. The Genovese family responded with a renewed wave of attacks, and the violence spilled into the public eye. Bombings, shootings, and arson became commonplace, and the once glamorous casinos of the Strip were now symbols of a city under siege. Tourists continued to flock to Las Vegas, but beneath the glitz and glamour, the city was unraveling. For Carlo Moretti, the loss of his financial records was a devastating blow. His paranoia, already heightened by the betrayal at the Flamingo, reached new heights. He began to question the loyalty of everyone around him, including Frankie the Fox Russo. Russo, whose double-dealing had sparked the ambush, was walking a razor-thin line. Moretti suspected Russo's motives but had no concrete evidence to act on. Russo, meanwhile, saw an opportunity in the chaos. He began positioning himself as a mediator, reaching out to Lombardi under the guise of negotiating a truce. But Russo's true intentions were far more ambitious. He had no loyalty to either Lombardi or Moretti and was quietly assembling his own network of loyalists. Russo's ultimate goal was to emerge as the dominant power in Las Vegas, and he was willing to betray both sides to achieve it. Lombardi, desperate for an edge, agreed to meet with Russo. The two men struck a tentative agreement. Russo would provide Lombardi with intelligence on Moretti's operations in exchange for a share of the Chicago outfit's profits in Las Vegas. But neither man trusted the other, and their alliance was built on a foundation of lies and hidden agendas. While Lombardi and Russo schemed, Moretti made a bold move of his own. Determined to reassert his dominance, he orchestrated a massive heist at one of Lombardi's most profitable casinos, the Bellagio Royale. The operation was a masterpiece of planning and execution, carried out with military precision. Moretti's men infiltrated the casino's security systems, disabling alarms and surveillance cameras before making off with millions in cash and chips. The heist was a humiliating blow to Lombardi, and its impact was felt across the city. The Bellagio Royale had been a symbol of the Chicago outfit's power, and its vulnerability sent a clear message: Lombardi was losing control. The heist also emboldened Moretti's allies, many of whom had been wavering in their support. For the FBI, the escalating violence and high-profile crimes provided the perfect cover for their operations. Agents had infiltrated both families, gathering evidence of their activities and monitoring their movements. The Bureau knew that the casino wars were reaching a breaking point, and they were determined to exploit the situation to bring down both organizations. As the conflict entered its final stages, Las Vegas was on the brink of collapse. The Strip, once a playground for the rich and famous, had become a war zone. The body count continued to rise, and the lines between ally and enemy were increasingly blurred. Lombardi, Moretti, and Russo were all playing dangerous games, each maneuvering for control while trying to outwit the others. But in a war where loyalty was fleeting and betrayal was inevitable, no one could be trusted. The casino wars had become a battle of attrition, and the city of Las Vegas was the ultimate prize. As the stakes grew higher, it became clear that the war could only end in bloodshed. Each move brought the players closer to a final confrontation, one that would determine the fate of the Strip and the men who fought to control it. The endgame of the casino wars was inevitable, yet the precise moment it began caught everyone off guard. Tensions had reached their peak, with Vincent Lombardi clinging to the remnants of his empire, Carlo Moretti growing increasingly paranoid and ruthless, and Frankie Russo manipulating both sides from the shadows. The Strip, once a beacon of glamour and excitement, was now a tinderbox waiting for the final spark to ignite chaos. That spark came in the form of a leaked FBI operation, setting off a chain reaction that neither the mobsters nor the authorities could fully control. The FBI, after years of surveillance and infiltration, was ready to make its move. Agents had gathered damning evidence against both the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family, including wiretaps, financial records, and testimonies from key informants. The Bureau planned simultaneous raids to dismantle the two crime families once and for all. But the leak changed everything. An anonymous source tipped off both Lombardi and Moretti about the impending raids, giving them just enough time to retaliate in ways the FBI hadn't anticipated. Lombardi, desperate to secure his position, decided to take matters into his own hands. He ordered Anthony DeLuca to eliminate Carlo Moretti before the authorities could intervene. Lombardi believed that Moretti's death would leave the Genovese family in disarray, allowing him to regain control of Las Vegas. DeLuca, known for his brutal efficiency, saw this as an opportunity to solidify his loyalty to Lombardi. At the same time, Moretti, no stranger to betrayal, had been preparing for such an attack. His network of informants alerted him to Lombardi's plan, and he set a trap. DeLuca and his men walked straight into an ambush outside a luxury hotel. A firefight erupted, leaving several of Lombardi's top enforcers dead. DeLuca himself barely escaped with his life, a humiliation that sent shockwaves through Lombardi's organization. The failed assassination attempt only escalated the violence. Lombardi, furious at the setback, launched a scorched earth campaign against Moretti's remaining assets. Casinos, warehouses, and even private homes linked to the Genovese family were targeted in a series of arson attacks and bombings. The destruction was indiscriminate, and innocent civilians were increasingly caught in the crossfire. Moretti responded in kind, unleashing his men on the few businesses still loyal to Lombardi. The once thriving Las Vegas Strip became a battleground, with gunfights breaking out in broad daylight and explosions lighting up the night. Tourists fled the city in droves, and the streets that had once been filled with laughter and music were now eerily silent, save for the echoes of violence. Amid the chaos, Frankie Russo made his move. For months, Russo had been quietly building his own power base, recruiting disillusioned members of both the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family. He played the two sides against each other, all the while positioning himself as the only viable alternative to the war that was tearing Las Vegas apart. With Lombardi weakened and Moretti consumed by paranoia, Russo saw his chance to seize control. Russo orchestrated a series of betrayals, convincing key figures in both organizations to switch allegiance. He promised them stability and prosperity, something neither Lombardi nor Moretti could offer in the midst of their conflict. Slowly but surely, Russo's influence grew, and his shadow loomed large over the city. But Russo's ambition did not go unnoticed. The FBI, still reeling from the leak, began to shift its focus toward him. Agents realized that Russo was not merely a player in the casino wars, but a potential successor who could continue the cycle of corruption and violence. Determined to prevent this, the Bureau launched an aggressive campaign to dismantle Russo's network before it could fully take shape. As the noose tightened around all three factions, the final showdown took place in a secluded desert mansion just outside Las Vegas. The mansion, owned by one of Moretti's associates, became the meeting point for a secret summit arranged by Russo. He had convinced both Lombardi and Moretti to attend under the pretense of brokering a truce. In reality, Russo intended to eliminate both men and declare himself the new ruler of Las Vegas. The meeting quickly devolved into chaos. Lombardi, ever suspicious, arrived with an entourage of heavily armed enforcers. Moretti, equally distrustful, did the same. Russo's plan to play the peacemaker unraveled as tensions flared and accusations flew. In the midst of the confrontation, gunfire erupted, and the mansion became a killing ground. By the time the smoke cleared, both Lombardi and Moretti were dead, along with many of their most loyal men. Russo, despite his careful planning, had underestimated the volatility of the situation. He too was killed in the crossfire, his ambition ending in the very bloodshed he had sought to control. The FBI arrived at the mansion minutes after the gunfight ended. Agents found a scene of utter carnage, with bodies strewn across the property and evidence of the criminal empires that had ruled Las Vegas for decades. The Bureau seized the opportunity to dismantle what remained of the Chicago outfit and the Genovese family, arresting dozens of operatives and confiscating millions of dollars in illicit assets. The casino wars were over, but the cost was immense. Las Vegas, a city built on dreams and decadence, had been brought to its knees. The Strip slowly began to rebuild, but the scars of the conflict remained. For years, stories of the war would be whispered in back rooms and dimly lit bars, a grim reminder of the price of power and the dangers of unchecked ambition. In the end, Las Vegas survived, but it would never be the same. The casino wars had reshaped the city, leaving a legacy of betrayal, violence, and the inevitable downfall of those who sought to control it. The lights of the Strip would shine again, but beneath the surface, the shadows of the past lingered, a silent testament to the war that had once consumed it. Thank you for watching this episode of Mystery Minds, where we explored the dark and deadly casino wars that shaped Las Vegas history. Greed, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of power brought two criminal empires to their knees. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more chilling true crime tales. Let us know in the comments, what do you think about the Mafia's influence on Sin City? Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.